the most intriguing guests ever. Just go to irnchat.com to interact and listen live to the Outlander show or find the archives on InceptionRadioNetwork.com. Today is Saturday, January 13th, 2018. Blasting off with some UFO reports. UFO sighting in Lutz, Florida. This occurred August 21st, 2017. In brief, the witness states it was during the eclipse, took several photos. In more detail, they say, I was at a job site during the eclipse. I used my phone to take pictures, an iPhone 7. The first picture caught my eye with a blue glow in front of the clouds and was moving. I took several pictures and talked about it on my Facebook page with people who were also taking pictures in different states. They all had the same electric blue spot. Stopped taking photos, had to get back to work. I cropped a few photos to get a closer image. It was awesome. The next UFO sighting occurred in Jackson, Mississippi. This is a UFO blast from the past, but it's a brief one. And in brief, they state a huge triangular shaped UFO about 100 feet above the ground. Ooh. I pulled off the interstate highway at a nearby gas station and I observed this similar UFO light formation one night near an Air National Guard base over Jackson, Mississippi, some years ago, and assumed it was the lights from a nearby tower. When I drove away, it was still there. I returned the next day to confirm there was no tower, just a vacant field. This made me believe I had observed was a real UFO. Until now, I never reported it. But now believe it was a huge triangular shaped UFO hovering over the interstate. Thank you for your comments. Okay. The next one is a UFO sighting over Tamworth, England, December 31st, 2017. In brief, they describe a fluorescent purple orb with green turquoise tail traveling at a very high speed. It sounds pretty, though. In more detail, they say, I was getting ready at 17:25 p.m. to go out for New Year's Eve, waiting for my partner to get out of the shower. We had a skylight in our bedroom of our three-story house. Our garden faces north. I noticed the moon was very bright, larger than normal, and was also a full moon. Looking at the moon to my right at about 2 o'clock, location-wise, and stars for a few minutes, it began to cloud over. Quite breezy, but blowing the clouds across the moon. I could see the usual planes high up, flashing red lights at different altitudes through the clouds. The wind direction was blowing north. Cloud levels were at different heights, some blowing northeasterly. I then noticed out of the corner of my eye to the left, approximately 9 o'clock direction, traveling from north easterly to west, in the lower cloud line, a purple orb teardrop, giving off a fluorescent green turquoise tail. The object was the size of an aspirin. The tail was an inch long. There was no vapor or smoke trail like you would get from a jet. Firstly, I thought a shooting star, but this was too low, too vivid in color, and was going through the lower clouds and much lower than a helicopter, and thousands of feet lower than any aircraft. It had direction, straight, then swerved, then straight again. The colors were breathtaking. The clouds reflected the colors and magnified within. At a guess, I would say it was below 1,000 feet, 2 miles away. We have houses along the ridge horizontally, and this was between us and them. I've seen shooting stars, and this definitely wasn't one. I watched the object travel out of sight at the rate of speed was incredible. I was like, wow, in awe of this beautiful object, speechless but excited. It seemed as though it was shielded at the front, appearing like a car on a windshield tunnel, deflecting clouds that were in front of it. Similar to a space rocket re-entering Earth's atmosphere is probably the nearest analogy. 2 days later, I came into work and was speaking to one of my staff about the incident. He lives 8 miles away and backs onto Army Barracks, Forge Lodge in Sutton Codfield. that is very low key, has U.S. military staff and UK alike. Admin apparently. Very residential area. His wife works at the base and knows the admin officers very well. On New Year's Eve, they had a thunderstorm around 20 p.m. that lit up the house, followed by a large boom, unlike thunder. This was then followed by two Army helicopters a few minutes later from out of nowhere. The following day, after we had spoken, he had mentioned to his wife about my viewing an object, and she replied, "Funny that. An object had been reported flying around the West Midlands on New Year's Eve." This was mentioned to her by an Army officer. Tamworth, Birmingham, and Cannock are all in the West Midlands, UK. Okay, all right. Um, this next UFO sighting happened in Shotton, Wales, a bit of a UFO blast from the past. This occurred September 2nd, 2014. While talking to my sister on the phone, I was watching the ISS live feed on my laptop. I noticed two small marks on the screen, which I first thought were just marks, but then realized they were actually objects in the distance which got closer to the ISS. In more detail, the witness states, "I had just got a new mobile phone and was talking to my sister one evening while watching a live feed of the International Space Station. At the time, it was passing over the Earth in daylight, and as I watched, I thought I noticed two marks on my screen and actually tried to wipe them off. I then realized they were actual small objects which were not always easy to see in the light. However, when the ISS went into darkness, I could see an oblong cylinder object a long way off in the distance. Although it looked small, I decided to try and film it on my phone. Not sure if I would pick it up. I only filmed it briefly, however, you can actually make it out in the distance. I carried on my conversation and kept an eye on the screen and noticed that two objects seemed to be very slowly rising up towards the ISS. One was the cylinder, the other a sphere. It went on this way for a while, then suddenly the sphere started moving quickly towards the ISS. I was so surprised I panicked, told my sister I would phone her back and tried to film it, but in my rush and not being able to use the phone, I managed to turn the flash on at the same time. So what looks like the sun is actually the flash of my camera. However, you can still clearly see the sphere at the end of the arm of the ISS. I was not sure if my flash would wash out the sphere on screen, so decided to try and turn it off. However, by the time I had done so, the sphere had already quickly left. I could still make out the cylinder, so I decided if I got closer, I would be ready. Whoever was in charge of pressing the button for the blue screen must have been on their break, because I filmed it for almost 6 minutes. Don't think I've seen one that lasts that long. In that time, it definitely moves closer to the ISS, and to me, it looks like it has some kind of pulsing light running down the length of it. Afterwards, I decided to go online to see if anyone had caught anything like it, and discovered a video on YouTube titled ISS, Possible Alien Craft, downloaded by StreetCap1 in 2014. To me, it looks like the same object. In some of the comments under his video, someone says it's just atmosphere reading climate device tethered to the ISS, while another says it's solar panel adhesive tape. That's a good one. How would they know? However, the fact that I caught this object earlier a long way off in the distance puts an end to those ideas. It is clearly not just light reflection, so I would like to know what else it could possibly be. If these are crafts, I've never seen any like them. Sorry for the short, jerky videos. I must say they look better on my phone. Thanks for your time. Regards, Clive. Alrighty. This next one is a huge UFO blast from the past, and oh, I'm going to slaughter this name too. Black Triangle sighting in Kirriemuir, Scotland. This occurred November 10th, 1995. In brief, they state, it went in straight lines and point A to B, covering a massive distance in one blink eye, and done the same thing back to the original flight pattern about 3 times as if to show off, then moved around a few more times, then vanished. I shouted at it, but no reply. Are you serious? No reply? Just kidding. All right, more detail. We were at a water dam, and this triangle, big shape, just appeared with lights flashing on the bottom of it. It moved from one point of the sky to another like it just jumped from one to the other without actually traveling. It covered massive amount of space in a blink of an eye. I got out my car, stood on a big wall, and shouted at it, "I'm from Scotland! Come over and introduce yourself!" That's funny. But it just continued to do its thing. I don't know why. It just sat in the sky, no noise, heat, or anything. It just sat there. I wasn't scared by my friend, but it was beautiful. Nothing we have can move like this triangle did, and I must have been just bigger than a four-bedroom house. It was a triangle V shape with a V with no bottom bit or middle. I never told anyone but my woman I'm still with, but now on TV the exact same thing I saw is on TV programs, and said to my wife, "That's exactly what I saw." Wow. All right, cool. All right, the next UFO sighting is from Lakewood, California. Another UFO blast from the past. This happened July 7th, 1994. Possible abduction. Ooh, okay. I was sleeping and I awoke to slamming cupboard doors in the kitchen. As soon as I awoke, I spotted a gray standing in front of my dresser. He went out of the room to tell the nurse she tended to put me under again. Huh? The nurse was alarming. She was light tan with sand peary skin, not unlike a shark. I saw their ship as they returned me to my room. At some point, they saw fit to introduce me to an entity named Ingy, who scared the heck out of me. Not that the others had a calming effect. Really? That's all you're going to write? You saw aliens and you just write a brief sentence? I mean, paragraph? Gosh. Okay. Anyways, I mean, oh, I just wish sometimes people would write more. All right, the next one. This is a UFO sighting from Oxnard, California. UFO blast from the past, March 25th, 2010. Didn't see the outside, and it was so dark inside. I only saw the being directly to my right. Oh, okay. We're talking about aliens, it sounds like. In more detail, in 1981-82, as a child, age 2 or 3, I would see two shadow figures standing in front of my window looking at me while I stare at them. Being too young, I wasn't scared, but just curious, staring at them from my crib. It happened sometime in the middle of the night. Unsure of the time, as I was too young, but I know it was dark. On one occasion, they just stared at me, these two shadow figures. A second time, I was playing in my room about the same time, 2 to 3 years old. This time, I could see the hall light on from under my door when I felt scared and went towards my room door, which I found out did not have a lock. When I attempted to open it, the door would resist. I could not open it, and when I tried crying out I could not hear my voice, no matter how loud I cried out. I don't know how long it lasted, but all of a sudden I just stopped, and my door once again opened, and the lights came, which had gone off only in my room. I'm assuming since I saw the lights on in the hall and could hear the TV my parents were watching in the living room. As a child from age 6 to 12, I would draw what I thought was a new alphabet I invented, which is strange in itself, but I would get the urge to draw out a new alphabet. An example would be a dot B would be two dots side by side. A C would be two vertical lines but tilted forward like the forward slash on a keyboard, and so on. Then as a teenager around 95, 99, I would have these intense dreams of this global battle. Ooh, this is getting interesting. I don't know where, but the landscape was unfamiliar, and the only building was a plain, square building with what looked like Egyptian hieroglyphics covering the front of the building. The building itself was large, but looked like 3 to 5 stories tall. I remember I was part of the battle and was able to either jump far or fly, but I was in battle with these reptile people who looked to be invading. Ooh. Another dream would be this giant eyeball, bigger than me, looking at me as I play. I in my cousin's backyard like I would do when I'd visit him. Fast forward to 2010. I go to sleep like any other night when I wake up to see a gray or light beige alien figure. He's standing on my right side, and I know I wasn't in my room because the wall was on the right side of my bed. My eyes focus, and I see it. And shocked, I make a low ugh noise. Ugh, I guess that's what it sounds like. It stops whatever it was doing and looks at me as it noticed I had woken up. It waves its hand over my face, and I don't remember anything after that. I woke up the next morning still thinking about what I had seen when I noticed a sharp pain with a burning sensation on my left inner forearm, sort of like when you burn yourself, the pain you feel after and the pain you feel the next day, to where it's still hurting, but what I saw is what really freaked me out. I had a small, V-shaped scar, about a half an inch wide, and not like a cut, but like a cut that had been laser sealed, which would explain the sharp burning pain. I had that scar for 5 months, and the burning pain never going away. Then from one night to the next it had totally vanished, but not before getting a picture. I haven't had any experiences that I know of to that date. The dream subsided, and it seems they were done with me until a few months back when I started hearing high-pitched noises, like a microphone coming in contact with a speaker. They last about 1 or 2 seconds and are nothing like the ringing in the ears. I've also noticed my body has been generating static shock to where I'm getting shocked from touching anything, and not even on rug, but in my kitchen with tile and bathroom with linoleum. It seems to last a couple of weeks and stops for months. Overall, the experience has left me with that of a victim and the feeling of being powerless with the fear it can happen again at any time. I am confident putting this on an FBI polygraph because I know the results will be in my favor. I am of Hispanic origin and I am type O negative blood, same as my mother. Okay, very interesting. I have to say a couple of things to this. A lot of people are having these dreams or nightmares of a battle going on between alien beings. I mean, regular everyday people, not just us folk into these topics, but regular folks. And I wrote about that in my book, The Secret War, and how that's happening and why it's going to happen. And that book was written in '97, some time ago. And interesting enough, I used to be just loaded with static electricity no matter where I was, especially going to open up a door or even to my car. I mean, I was being shocked to death, I thought, at one point. Well, anyways, moving on. Moving on. The next UFO sighting. This occurred April 20th, 2017, in Sedona, Arizona. Witnessed a flash of light that remained in the same area of the sky for about 45 minutes. In more detail, the witness states, I live in Sedona, Arizona. My wife, brother-in-law, and myself were sitting on my back porch stargazing. I was just telling my BIL about this light that I've seen on several occasions over the past few years. No sooner did I say it, and there it was, roughly in the same area of the sky. I got my night vision and laser pointer and began to record. I recorded for 8 minutes or so, but the actual time the light remained in view was 45 minutes. It moved very slowly through the constellation Ophiuchus. It moved in a staggered path and seemed to remain still for several minutes at a time while traveling. It didn't just disappear, it turned away and just became fainter until we lost sight of it. Wow, very cool. Next UFO sighting. This happened in Louisville, Kentucky on August 10th, 2017. In brief, the witness states, saw several orange orbs hovering low in the sky. My first experience seeing what I thought was a fake star when it shapeshifted into an old type of airplane. Ooh, I've actually heard of that too. In more detail, the witness states my sister and I were filming what I believed to be fake stars in the sky over the summer. They were orb-like, orange in color, pulsating and spinning. Noticeably not what I know stars to look like. However, we couldn't ID the objects. There were a few in the sky that we filmed, and when I reviewed the tape this evening, I realized there were other orb-like objects that we recorded flying around and below the main orange lights in the sky. We were filming for several minutes. The objects just hovered about 27, 33 degrees in the horizon. After like 5 or so minutes, the orange light started to lower its altitude. You see the light bend a few times as it morphed. It started to change shape. It turned into an airplane. A real large airplane with LED-ish glowing type of modern airplane lights. The plane was huge. When the plane started to shapeshift, you then start to hear the hum change into what sounded like a propeller-driven aircraft. And as it flies over, it sounded so low and not appropriate for the type of plane that was overhead. I've seen a video of that actually. Somebody was filming a black triangle. This is many years ago. And as they're filming this perfectly silent thing and they can't believe what they're seeing, all of a sudden, as if they flipped on a switch and whoosh, just like all of a sudden it sounded like a 747. And I love the reaction of the person that was filming it going, I caught you. You are not a plane. You are not a plane. You're not fooling me. It was pretty entertaining, actually. And the next report is an alien encounter in England. This happened January 1st, 2018. In brief, the witness states, the entity was checking on me. I saw the being become translucent. The main thing is I was used to implant something that seemed to break off from my waist, move down my leg to my foot, which I felt with a strong pins and needles. I could feel it moving. I was so scared. I knew it was inside me as my eyesight became unreal. Our eyes can do a lot more than we think. I could see a panoramic. The concrete walls became see-through. I could see my pal's skeleton and internal organs. I could even see the heat out of their eyes and mouth. Well, okay. That was an interesting one. Have not heard that one before. Alrighty. The next UFO sighting. This occurred in New Westminster, British Columbia. This is a serious blast from the past of the UFO past. This occurred July 6, 1975. Observed one large ship, then three similar but smaller ships appeared and fly very quickly around the large ship. In more detail, a friend and I rode our motorcycles to meet another group of friends in a car at the Surrey Drive-In Theater. The car was full of people, so my friend and I sat on our motorcycles to watch the movie, all the time drinking and smoking and talking to the friends in the car. We're about halfway through the movie when I saw the large ship appear over the Fraser River just east and upstream of the Patullo Bridge. Green, yellow, and a red laser bright light spun around the disc-shaped craft in both directions. It would hover, then ascend hundreds of feet straight up, hover for a bit, then descend to a similar altitude as seen before. These altitude moves were made at light speeds, as if you were pointing a flashlight in the sky and moving it back and forth. About a minute after the initial sighting, three smaller but similar craft appeared and danced around, doing the same kind of maneuvers as the larger craft. This lasted for about 15 minutes, and then they disappeared in the sky. Because I was on my Kawasaki watching the movie, I was one of the first to see the craft. I alerted my buddies in the car and others around me by pointing up to the craft. Some car horns started to honk, and pretty soon no one was watching the movie. Some people were screaming, and I saw quite a few cars leave the drive-in. The next day I listened to all the news on TV and radio, and the only report I could see was from our local New Westminster radio station reporting that the mysterious lights seen were from experimental lighting on a helicopter. I know that no plane or helicopter can accelerate and stop that quickly and make no sound. In fact, I believe nothing earthly can maneuver like that. 25 years later, I would work with a woman at a new Westminster mill, and we got talking about UFOs, and I began telling her this story. Her eyes got wide. She told me that she was there with her girlfriend, and they were one of the cars that left the movie, scared for their lives. Isn't that something? Believe it or not, I was at a at a drive-in theater and saw a UFO streak the sky. Everybody shrieked and, like, whoa, what was that? It was pretty fascinating. So, kind of cool to read that story. But what a load of crap to say it was a helicopter experimental light. I mean, really? Really. They knew too many people had witnessed it, so they had to think of something. Okay, moving on. We've got a UFO news story that is entitled, What Does $22 Million Buy in UFO Research? In light of the December 16th bombshell disclosure articles by the New York Times, Politico, and the Washington Post regarding the Pentagon's Special Access Unit that is researching UFOs, aka advanced aviation threats, the author states, My thought is that it's wonderful the Department of Defense has finally admitted that they have been collecting data on UFOs for some time. Me, Heidi, personally, I'm like, they could have done better, but yay, they made an effort. Okay, continuing the story. Is this the news that the UFO community has been waiting for? Yes, for most of the community, but for the hardliners, they say no. They want to drink from a fire hose of information. They want a captured UFO craft presented on camera. They want the truth about Roswell and a shopping list of other questions to be answered. Yet, this disclosure is just what the world needed. We needed major newspapers to do a serious story about the government has been actually doing. And we needed that story to start a national global media conversation on the topic. This is what we got. I watch with amusement, the author says, as TV news commentators who are used to making fun of the topic struggle to ask deep questions and discuss the topic intelligently. I saw that too. The other thing we needed was for a U.S. government organization like the Pentagon to admit they have been doing serious research into UFO events for years. So now the conversation has started, and let's hope it's positive and educational. On another aspect, after the stories broke, I heard a lot of people moaning about the wisdom of spending $22 million for UFO research. Isn't that the Defense Department's job to study possible threats of all kinds and explore defensive remedies? As a former staffer for an aerospace contractor, I decided to look at what our tax dollars probably purchased. First, a $22 million contract is modest in defense contracting terms. If I was tasked to do a budget and propose staffing for a project like this, what follows is how the cost might break down. Oh, I like this. The subcontract given to Bigelow Aerospace was $22 million over 5 years. That amounts to an annual payout of $4.4 million per year, and that breaks down to a monthly billable budget of $366,000. Corporate management and contracts management would take about 10% off the top to deal with the task of doing business, or about $36,000. Down at the project management and personnel management level, I would expect another 5.5% to be given to management overhead, or about $18,000. At the research and technical level, I would expect the staffing of 5 PhD scientists. This would account for another $62,000, or about 17% of the monthly budget. The scientists would need a support team of 8 staff engineers with a budget of $66,000 per month, or about 18%. To support the scientists and engineers, there would be a multi-level staff of technicians, administrators, and research support personnel, perhaps 18 altogether, at a monthly budget of $90,000, or 24%. Of course, researching all exotic UFO things requires physical overhead, special work facilities, utilities, IT services, and of course a sizable physical and IT security support infrastructure. Let's say the facilities overhead would ring in at $91,000, or another 25% of the monthly budget. The budget balances with a few dollars to spare. My proposed budget projection is just an estimate using reasonable industry labor and burden rates. The staffing and budget are not unrealistic given the overall size of the contract. The question you must be asking yourself is, was the money spent well? New York Times reporter Ralph Blumenthal was interviewed at MSNBC on Monday, December 18th, and stated that the research was looking at unknown compounds. Digging back into the original New York Times article, it indicated that Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas has specialized facilities for the storage of metal alloys and other materials that Mr. Elizondo and program contractors said had been recovered from unidentified aerial phenomena. I'd say that's money well spent. Now, if they would just share some more of the cool stuff with the rest of us. If you have a UFO report, this author is then asking for them and asking you to go to MUFON.com. Woo, fascinating stuff. You know, when Mr. Tyson, Mr. Astrophysicist, was talking about this itty bitty project and this itty bitty budget like it was nothing, I could have done a lot with 22 million, let me tell you. Well, I have to say, thank you so much for listening to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis. Be sure to check out UFOHeadlineNews.com every single day and tune in to The Outlanders every Friday at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And you could also check out my paranormal comic strip, TheOutlandersComic.com.